Colleges panic as students say they don't care DEI offices got shut down. This is the first story I've ever seen of this kind, and you probably haven't seen anything like this either because it's a little bit too honest. Of course the students don't care. Coming from WyoFile, DEI multicultural affairs closures draw little attention from most University of Wyoming students. Because people have other things going on in their lives. They're not focused on DEI. So if you actually went up to college students and asked them, how does this really affect you? Not the head of the LGBT organizations, not the head of the diversity office who just got fired, not someone who says that, oh, thanks to the diversity office, I was able to complete college and it gave me confidence and it made me felt like I belong. Like, okay, sure, there are always exceptions to the rule. But for the most part, of course students don't need this. It was a complete waste of money. It was totally inappropriate, and they never should have opened these offices to begin with. Laramie community leaders want to make sure all students at UW feel welcome after the university made changes at the behest of the Wyoming legislature. Students rushed between classes on a late September day at the University of Wyoming. Some sported jackets or hoodies to stave off the morning cold, but many were down to t-shirts as the sun warmed the air. The calm on campus belied the controversies swirling around Wyoming's lone four-year university. This winter, hardline Wyoming lawmakers took aim at multiple university programs that they considered divisive or out of step with the state's politics. That ultimately led to the closure of the school's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and the conversion of the Multicultural Affairs Office into the Polk Center for Community Resources. WyoFile talked to a few dozen students to gauge their reaction to the changes and the university's handling of the situation. The vast majority either didn't know about the changes, didn't feel particularly impacted, or said they didn't know enough to comment. The few who did talk focused more on their experience outside those spaces. Allison Bromley, a sophomore studying double elementary and special education, said she appreciated the emails and regular communication from the university on actions it's taking. So it's always nice to be kept up to date, but she's got no problem with getting rid of the nonsense offices. Another freshman noted that he appreciates the diversity on campus, though it's different from his home in Arizona. He also felt the university is supporting diversity at the right level. Quote, as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion, I feel like things are pretty good here, he said. Because it's no one's priority unless you're pushing a political agenda and you're using it as cover to push a political agenda. Alex Huss, a junior who's studying zoology, felt that DEI resources for students have never been particularly easy to find, and that even once students discovered those spaces, it could feel like only certain people belonged. Well, because they were for only certain people, and now they're gone. It's not surprising that many of the students walking across campus weren't aware of changes involving the multicultural affairs or DEI offices. Only a fraction of students likely utilize those services. Still, there are off-campus efforts to find new ways to support those who may feel less welcome at the university following the changes. During this year's budget session, the legislature cut UW's biannual block grant by the same amount the university spent on the DEI office. Lawmakers also forbid the university from spending state dollars on DEI efforts, though they didn't define what that meant. The state is the university's largest funding source. This is the money of the constituents. This is the money of the people, represented by the legislature. They should not be wasting people's tax dollars on things like this, and now they're not. In the wake of those decisions, the university's Board of Trustees voted to close the DEI office while attempting to retain many of the programs and its staff, arguing that most of what happened there didn't involve the exclusionary behaviors lawmakers sought to root out. That included complying with federal regulations, including the Americans with Disabilities Act. If students have disabilities and you have services for those students, no one has an objection to that. But to incite racial division just by saying, well, this race is practically disabled, they're not really disabled, but let's pretend they are so we can give them special programs that mostly they don't even use, is ridiculous. It was a political move to open these offices, and now they're closed. Still, University President Ed Seidel said there would be ongoing reviews of programs across campus to make sure they don't discriminate or exclude, which would make them ineligible for state funds. In August, the university announced that it would be refashioning the decades-old Office of Multicultural Affairs into the Polk Resource Center, changing job descriptions of people working there. It also transitioned the Polk Pride Center into a clothing and resources closet. Okay, so they turned your office into a closet. As of September 19th, Seidel said he wasn't aware of additional program changes to come from DEI reviews beyond those already mentioned. Just a few blocks from the university's campus is the nonprofit Laramie Plains Civic Center. It's a large historic school building now home to dozens of offices and community spaces, along with a coffee shop. Executive Director Jessica Brower has led community discussions on what's needed in Laramie in lieu of the DEI and Multicultural Affairs office closures. Quote, "Our mission as an organization is to just serve as a gathering place for the community at large, and to provide safe and accessible space for people to gather and connect with one another and hopefully grow from those connections," she said. Still, there's considerable confusion about the changes, according to Brower. That includes who's to blame for the university's office closures, exactly what resources still exist, and what's needed next for those who used those offices previously. Still, the community sessions at the Civic Center highlighted some specific needs, Brower said, and many are continuing to discuss how to establish a space for students to feel welcome if they no longer feel that way at the university. That may range from LGBT to international to Native students, she said. Quote, "The teams that work with for those folks, I think a lot of them feel like they no longer can support the people that they want to support," she said. Quote, "How do we protect these people? But also, how do we keep our jobs while we do that?" Well, what do you mean, how do you keep your jobs while you do that? Just get instructions. If people come to you on a certain basis that's approved by your instructions from whoever your bosses are, you're fine. If you're trying to give extra resources to people on a discriminatory basis, that's not fine. And yes, you should lose your job over that, and that's what all the changes are about. The Civic Center has faced its own challenges with making groups in the community feel welcome, including having its pride flags stolen. Quote, "I perhaps naively hung these pride flags thinking, oh, the community knows that everybody's welcome here," Brower said. No, when you hang pride flags in an office, it doesn't mean everyone's welcome. It means you're ideologically focusing on that specific group. And if you're going to do that, you're going to do that. But it doesn't mean everyone's welcome. It means those people in particular are welcome. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But no one's being fooled by that. The queer population is part of the fabric of Laramie and her facility, she said. And not only are they welcome here, but they make it better. She continues, "And so I think that when those flags started getting removed routinely, I was really surprised and disappointed," she said. "I think it points to just a larger hatred that's happening in the community, in the state, in the nation." Many pride flags were held high Saturday during the University of Wyoming's homecoming parade, where groups including the Laramie Pride Fest, Shepherd Symposium on Social Justice, St. Paul's United Church of Christ, and P-Flag Laramie all marched together. Part of the reason the groups joined up was to demonstrate support for those who feel less welcome amid the rise of anti-gay animus in Wyoming, according to P-Flag Laramie President Katie Morgan. P-Flag is the largest and oldest LGBT ally organization in the country, Morgan said, and in Laramie, most members are UW alumni. Morgan has seen firsthand what it means for a society to turn its back on its LGBT members, as critics of the changes allege. Her first husband came to her when he was diagnosed with AIDS, from which he later died. For her, the local P-Flag group was supportive and helpful. She later worked with AIDS care in Texas and Colorado. Quote, "I saw firsthand what discrimination and what misunderstanding and lack of education can do to a community," she said. You can tell the author of this article would want to have kept the LGBT centers, the DEI centers, open at this university. However, they didn't keep them open. And as much as they tried to kind of drum up some feeling about, well, this is not appropriate, it's not fair, how could the legislature actually do this? They weren't able to do it because the author decided they wanted to tell an honest story about what actually happened. There could be 50 or 100 stories like this if the people who actually went and talked to students were honest about what the students were saying. Like, this doesn't change most people's lives. This isn't a resource that should be provided for by the public. The public should not be paying for these kinds of offices. While it's not fair to say that nobody benefits from these offices, if they're not appropriate and available to all students who might need them, including all students of every gender, every race, every sexual preference, they shouldn't be paid for by the state. And at least in this story, at the University of Wyoming, the students didn't notice and didn't care that the offices were closed. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.